Hello BookTube, it's Mike from Riff Raff's Reading Renaissance, and today I want to do a tag. I've been tagged by the lovely Pat from Book Chat with Pat, everybody's favorite book granny, and I would be delighted to do the tag. The one she's decided to tag me on is what's called the Would You Rather tag. I've just seen Em do it as well. I think Pat was explaining how horrendous some of the choices are for readers such as ourselves, but that's the fun of it. It's really just a chance to get to know a little bit more about how we look at reading and what we think about reading. So I'll dive straight in without further ado. Question 1. The choice is between never read more than one book from the same author and you can't reread, or read only books from one author of your choice. I don't know. I think variety is the spice of life. I can't see myself being limited to one author. And I think given the amount of books that there are out there that I've already identified that I want to read, I suspect maybe I'm applying a little bit of a one per author rule anyway thus far. It's not entirely true. If I look at Tolstoy and I look at Dostoevsky, I've read both of their big chunkers each. But I'm trying to make sure I dip my toe into lots of different literary pools before going back for a wallow. The second one is read a book with an unlikable main character or your favorite character dies. This really isn't a hard one for me. I don't mind an unlikable main character at all. I think part of the fascination of literature is when authors capture the true nature of human beings. And I think that we as human beings, despite however well-meaning we might be, are actually quite flawed, each in our own unique way, as Tolstoy might have said. I think the real brilliance of writing is when character development is so good that you feel like you know this person in real life. That, for me, does not have to be about someone that I love or I even like. It can be about someone that I find quite distasteful. I think a well-written villain or even a well-meaning hero who's facially flawed and makes terrible mistakes can lead to wonderful literature, and it's all ultimately about the quality of the writing. The third one is choice between start your library from scratch and you can't rebuy any of the books that were on your shelves before, or never be allowed to add a new book to your current library. Again, I'm with Pat on this one. Some of these choices are horrendous, but given that we have to make a choice, I would choose to never be allowed to add another book. And if you want to know why I make that choice, I would simply move subtly out of the picture and let you see the books behind me, some of whom are still to be read. I think I've probably got within my own collection enough books to last me the rest of my life, if I'm honest. So the thought of starting again from scratch on a collection that I've built up slowly and quietly over many, many years with a view to eventually finding time to get through them all, hopefully, is more than daunting to me. So I would opt for the option of sticking with what I've got and starting at one end and working my way through. The fourth one, the fourth choice is your favorite author never publishes anything new or only publishes bad books from now on. That one I don't find too hard. The thought of publishing bad books is completely distasteful to me. One of my biggest fears, given my age and therefore, as Steve Donahue keeps reminding us, the limited period of time we have left to read what we want to do, the thought of reading a book and discovering it wasn't worth the time you invested is a real distasteful thing to me. That's why I value BookTube so much in terms of listening to what people think, getting to know people, and getting to work out whether I will agree with their choices. I have some very good friends in real life who will tell me what films I should see. Some of them I follow, and some of them I've learnt that whatever they recommend is definitely not one I should bother with. Both ways are valuable. So I would choose that my favorite author never publishes anything new, particularly if I'm lumbered with the choice I made in number 2, where I'm only allowed to read one book by that favorite author anyway. So there's a sort of insanity that sort of runs through this thing and is starting to make sense in a Kafkan kind of way. The number 5 says, read only one of your favorite genres or read as widely as you want, except in that one favorite genre. I haven't thought to define the genre. My favorite genres would include things like history and biographies, and I suppose books on music. It would be very tough not to be able to read from any of those single genres that I chose. But I think it would be worse to not be able to read outside of one genre. Again, variety is the spice of life. I think I wouldn't be happy to limit myself to merely one genre for forever and ever. I think that would be untenable. Number 6 in this torturous list of choices. Be stranded forever on a desert island with a full library, or still live in society, but books have disappeared. No, I don't think so. I think the desert island. I think books are companions, and if they're good books and well written, the people in the books come to life as you read them. So you would not be deserted on your desert island. You would have a full cast of characters to entertain you. And the thought of living in a society where books have disappeared is a little too close to the bone as we watch what's happening around us in various parts of the world at the moment. So I would definitely vote for a full library on a deserted island. One might even go back to when COVID lockdowns were happening. Obviously, those were traumatic times for people whose income was affected. I discovered a little bit about myself, that if someone shoved food under the door, I was quite happy to have time alone with books and an excuse to read them. So that was not the worst choice I've had to make so far in this tag. All right, number 7. Read only 5-star series, but they're unfinished, or read only thick standalones with a bunch of info dumping. Moby Dick, anyone? Yeah, that's not difficult for me. I'm not really a fan of series. I've got nothing against them, but I'm not really a science fiction enthusiast. I'll obviously get around to reading Ursula K. Le Guin and the ones that everybody says that you have to read because of the quality of the writing rather than because it's science fiction. But when it comes to series versus thick standalones, there's no debate for me. I mean, if I talk about thick standalones in my recent past, would be Moby Dick, which is the king of all info dumping exercises, and even the big Russians, the brothers Karamazov. You know, there are sections of that book that wander off on a little bit of a rant. Even Tolstoy in War and Peace. And I've survived those quite happily because the writing is so good that the journey to another area of thought is not difficult to endure. Question 8, a choice between, it says mystery, always get book twists spoilt, or they all have an open ending and the killer isn't caught. I'm perfectly all right with open endings. I'm perfectly all right where the killer isn't caught because, hey, that's real life. I mean, I live in a country that has a lot of interesting challenges in its legal system, a lot of villains who don't seem to be brought to book in time, and I know I'm not alone in that. I think this, again, I don't mind when literature reflects real life as long as it does it credibly and with an intelligence, depth, and the development of some of these devious characters. To me, that's part of the joy of literature. So the thought of getting plot twists spoilt, I heard somebody talking on BookTube the other day about, are you the kind of person who flips to the back of the book? And no, I mean, as a young reader, I got hooked on Agatha Christie. And if you really want to spoil an Agatha Christie, start at the end. There's no question. This is easy. I don't mind open ending. I don't mind books that reflect the imperfections of real life. I find that rewarding when I can relate to what is being said, even if it isn't always comforting or cozy. Number 9, historical romance. A great love story with historical inaccuracies, or a toxic or meh love story, but great historical world building. I'm not really one who goes for romance, but I do get slightly irritated by historical errors. I don't mind if literary license is taken, as long as it's sort of declared as such. But it is irritating if someone chooses to write a historical fiction book and then doesn't do the legwork to get the basics right. Because I think often the case is, if you are knowledgeable about what's being written about, you'll find it irritating. And if you're not knowledgeable about what's being written about and you're reading the book to grow your knowledge, then it's a little bit uncomfortable, especially in the world we live in now, where facts and the truth are becoming endangered species. Again, I have no objection to literary license, but I sort of like it declared. For example, if I read The 100 Years of Solitude, I had no problem at all with all the weird deviations that happened, because it was very clear that what we were exploring was what the people in the story believed, and no one was asking me to believe that these various magical things had actually happened. Moving on to number 10, read a book that has the best characters or plot or writing, and you can only choose one, but none of the others. Yeah, I think between characters, plot, and writing, I would choose writing. Normally this question comes to you as characters versus plot, and there I would choose characters, because plot is fine, plot happens, but characters is what makes the journey fascinating. Characters are the people, the fellow travelers as you go through the story contained in the book, and I think that I would normally choose characters over plot. But if you throw in writing as a third choice, I actually think that's the one I would choose, because I don't know whether this comes from my musical side, but there are times when I look at writing, and when you're reading it, it is almost akin to me to listening to music, because the real skill of a fantastic writer is someone who can play the English language, or whichever language he's writing in. For me, it would be English, to play the English language like a musical instrument. I don't have an example to hand, but I have, I think I've talked in an earlier video where I keep a journal in which I only write the passages in the books I read that literally stop me dead in my tracks, where the writing is so beautiful or so powerful that I need to stop and catch my breath. And that's a wonderful experience. When you have that moment, you think, first of all, I've chosen a good book, a good author, and it's a wonderful feeling of taking a step further in your literary experience journey. So I would definitely choose writing. Good writing beats everything. I've had some experiences during Garb August, God bless it, where some of the writing was just so uninspiring that the plot could have been, the most amazing story. And I was still going like, how many pages to go? So I think writing is number one. Characters would be number two. And plot follows as a sort of distant third. The next one, excuse me, number 11. Have a friend who loses your books or mistreats them, stains them, breaks the spine. Okay, this is very easy because I do have a particular friend, and if you're watching He Who Shall Be Nameless, you know exactly who you are. My problem is I'll read a book and I'll get very excited, and I have one particular very close friend who literally lives about 5 doors away from me, and I want, when I get excited about a book, he tends to be my first go-to to say, have you read this? Do you know how good it is, etc., etc. And I've had experiences recently where I've said, this is so good, I'm going to lend you my copy, I want you to read it. And of course, those copies never come back. To the extent that I've actually gone out and bought myself another copy of the book, because I won't name the book, because then the anonymity, people, names and places have been removed here to protect the innocent. Yeah. So I think the thought of someone who mistreats a book, I don't mind people who beat a book up in the act of reading. That's fine. And I certainly don't mind making notes. I don't tend to write in my books, except for what I do is I use these silly little post-it things to tag a page, and then I tend to put a black line down the side of the paragraph that I want to immediately come back to. But I don't tend to write copious notes in the book. I tend to do those in a journal outside of the book. But I'm not precious about books. Books are there if you want. What I've often done is started with a second-hand working copy, which I read and beat up. And then if, in the case of something like War and Peace, this is a book that clearly you want to keep for the rest of your life, then it's worth investing in a decent copy, which one might look after a little bit more pristinely than the original working copy. Okay, question 12. Never be allowed to visit a bookstore again or be banned from all the libraries in the world. Wow. Okay, this is an interesting one for me based here in South Africa, because our bookstores are, with the best will in the world, a little bit woeful. The literacy rates and reading is not as established a habit here as you lucky people who live either in the USA or the UK. When I listen to you talk about the number of bookstores, the number of floors in the building of the bookstore, I look on with great envy, and I rely heavily on online services, both Amazon. Amazon has only recently arrived in South Africa about a year ago, and that has been a godsend because it does open up avenues to get a lot more books if you're ordering new books. New books in South Africa are taxed with the VAT system, which is iniquitous. I envy all of you. I know the UK doesn't tax reading. So buying books in South Africa new is an exceptionally expensive exercise, and the market is small. I was reading an interview with the head of Exclusive Books, which is our probably biggest book retail chain, sort of like a Barnes & Noble or a Waterstones or one of those. And he was saying that less than 10% of South Africans regularly buy books, and the reading rates are very low. So, coming back to the question after that long ramble, talk about info dumping, never to be allowed to visit a bookstore in my local context is less of a challenge than being banned from all the libraries in the world. Our local libraries here are not as exciting as perhaps some of those in the towns and cities where you guys live, but the thought of being banned from all the libraries in the world is just too daunting. So I would have to choose never being allowed to visit a bookstore. And if that means a physical bricks and mortar bookstore, then I've still got the online option. And in fact, there's quite an efficient local online option here in the second-hand books market. We have a local website called Bob Shop. The Bob stands for bid or buy. It's very similar to eBay, better known to you guys overseas. And in fact, that is a fantastic source, because the way they have structured it is all the second-hand mom and pop bookshops within the country are linked up to it. And I don't quite know what the logistical arrangements are, but the cost of having the books delivered to your door is astronomically cheap. In our currency, it's 35 Rand. Which would barely break $2, So there's a very cost-effective way of finding second-hand books, but of course you are at the mercy of the books that South African book buyers have bought, which is also a somewhat limited market. So that's another long ramble on why I would have to keep the option open for the libraries of the world. Number 13, everybody hates your favorite books, or everyone loves the books you hate. Here it helps to be a bit of an old fossil. I really don't mind very much what other people think about the books I read. My favorite books will be determined by how much I enjoyed the experience of reading them. And therefore, if other people don't have the same experience, hey, we're all entitled to our own taste, and I do think reading is a very individual thing. And if people love the books I hate or hate the books I love, it really isn't something that's going to keep me awake at night. What is exciting is when you find people like I've found within the booktube community whose tastes align, at least in part, and it doesn't always have to be an exact fit. I know some book people here on BookTube who love science fiction, but they may also love another genre that fascinates me. Now, I'm not a lover of science fiction. That doesn't matter. One can pick and choose and cherry pick. The trick is to get to know people, and I think some of these sort of seemingly frivolous tags are quite helpful too, to get to know how people view reading, what it means in their life, so that you can work out when to take their prompts and when to take the advice they're giving you and use it in another direction. Okay, number 14, only listen to audiobooks narrated by the worst narrator, and poor old Mickey Mouse is nominated here as the worst narrator example, or only read physical books in terrible lighting. Okay, this one solves itself. Let me start by saying I'm not actually a huge lover of audiobooks. I've got nothing against them. I think they're a wonderful idea. But there's two reasons why I don't tend to consume books in the form of audiobooks. The one is I find when I listen to audio, it's normally podcasts, which I do when I'm doing something that I can listen while I'm doing something else, like driving to work or something of that nature. And therefore, just for time convenience, it tends to be either news or analysis of local politics or analysis of international politics, which is equally interesting and important. And I have to say there's a rich amount of freely available information in the podcast world. I'm a big fan of podcasts, but that therefore means that space is sort of crowded out from the audiobook side. Secondly, I must confess, I've gone through a couple of audiobooks and the experience is much less rewarding for me. I don't know whether it's that listening I associate with something that I do with less intensity, and therefore perhaps I'm not paying enough audial attention to the book as I would if I was sitting with the words in front of me and processing them through the act of physical reading. But the bottom line is audiobooks don't really work for me. And then if you look at the other choice, reading physical books in terrible lighting, I'm at an age where my eyes are recognizing the age of my eyes, and consequently the concept of terrible lighting just fills me with complete terror. And therefore, if I had to choose between the two, I would plump for audiobooks, but it's not a very happy plump, but it's better than terrible lighting. Number 15, choose between books from the same series or collection that don't match, or read books printed in a tiny font. Okay, the tiny font is the same problem as the terrible lighting. I need to be able to read, and I can hear you saying, well, why don't you have e-readers? I do have an e-reader, and I use it quite seldom, to be honest. I'm extremely wedded to the physical book. I don't know why. It feels a bit Luddite in this high-tech age we're talking about now, and I concede all the conveniences of having 1,000 books in something you can put in your pocket, traveling, all of that. I have absolutely no argument against the ebook. I simply know that there's a visceral joy in holding a physical book in your hand. If you just pick it up and disappear into it, there is nothing quite to match that in the world of tech. So full marks for tech for giving us options. But it's not normally my choice. Now, if I come back to the actual question, this is a bit of a meandering tag. I think it's a way of coping with these horrible questions. So reading books printed in a tiny font is a non-starter, and therefore by default I have to go for the other option, which says books from the same series or collection that don't match. If we're talking about they physically don't match in terms of the appearance or which edition they are, that's less than important to me. I always joke about we live in one corner of BookTube, and in the other corner of BookTube is the book talk presenter who says, look, all my pink books are on one shelf. I really am not that. I really don't care. The books can be different sizes. It's always nice if they align, but it is not a priority. And as I said, a lot of my books are found through secondhand sources, either secondhand online, or I also frequent both charity shops. Our animal shelter organizations have quite good bookshops attached to them where people donate books, which are then sold to raise funds, obviously. And there, it's about finding the book. the form it comes in, the edition it comes in, the size it comes in are normally not things that you can choose about. It's either there or it's not, and if it's there, you grab it, and it's a very reasonable price, and you're glad to have found it. As I said, if you read a book that you then love so much that you want it to be a companion for the rest of your life, you can always indulge and then go and order it at a more expensive price in an edition that is more pleasing aesthetically. But that's not an issue for me. Number 16, never post another YouTube video or never watch YouTube again. Okay, that one's fairly easy. I watched YouTube for, I suppose, about a year before I decided to take the plunge. And I really am enjoying it, I have to say. It's a wonderful corner of the internet. It seems to be the nicest corner of the internet, where we feel like a family, both in the fact that we're pretty nice people, but also as you all see from time to time, there are little skirmishes and people say things and somebody goes off in a huff and somebody comes back and people kiss and make up, and it sounds like a real community, and that's a fantastic thing to be part of. However, if I had to choose between never posting or never watching, I would need to choose never watching. I would be very sad to go back to my more passive status, but I must say I think there are fantastic unsung heroes, the crowd of people who watch our videos and kindly leave comments and engage. Not everyone is in a situation to produce their own content for various reasons, and I'm always extremely touched by people, particularly those who don't have their own channels, who do leave comments and engage through the comments process, because I was one of those once and I remember how it felt, and I'm always deeply grateful when people do that. So I would choose to never post again as long as I could keep watching YouTube, because at the end of the day, if you can watch YouTube, YouTube will tell you what they think you should read, and although the choice is yours, that's part of the richness of this experience. Okay, the last question, as always in these things, is to tag BookTube friends. I think Pat had an exhaustive list of it looked like the credits rolling at the end of a movie of all the people she tagged, and I think that's typical of Pat. She's such a wonderful person, so I think I can't beat that. But let me say, as I often do at the end of tags, which is the sort of lazy man's way out, that if you've watched this and you have a channel and no one's tagged you yet, like you, Steve, then you must consider yourself tagged. I do think that the principle of the whole idea behind tags is just to get the community chatting to each other. The questions are seldom of deep import. It's more about listening to people talking about their love of books. And that's what I've tried to do for a lot longer than I originally thought when I started this tag. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And thank you very much to Pat for tagging me. That was very kind. And I hope you had fun listening to my endless rambling about how I approach these questions. That's all for this time. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you very much. And bye-bye for now.